Planning and Supply Manager at Kobil Petroleum Limited, formerly known as Mobil Oil Company. He had previously worked with the Kenya Petroleum Refineries Limited, having joined the government-owned company in 1974 after graduating from the University of Surrey in the United Kingdom. He left the corporation in 1979 to work with Kobil, a multinational corporation. As a newcomer into politics, Kerugi Joseph Laiboni Mukindia took many by surprise following his dramatic victory in the 1988 general election. Even in his home district of Meru, he was not well known. He defeated two veteran politicians, Julius Muthamia and Gennaro Gituma, in the parliamentary race for Meru Southwest constituency, later named Central Imenti. After winning in 1988, he was appointed Assistant Minister for Energy. Mukindia worked in different ministries as a cabinet minister under President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi. In December 1991, Kenya's political landscape changed as several political parties were registered. In the Mount Kenya region, Mwai Kibaki formed the Democratic Party and Kenneth Matiba, one of the leaders who had been detained for agitating multipartyism, formed the Forum for Restoration of Democracy for the Sili. KANU reacted by restructuring its presence in Meru. Moi appointed Mukindia Minister for Research, Science and Technology to replace George Muhoho, who had left KANU to join DP. Mukindia faced the 1992 general election in an area that supported the opposition. In 1988, he defied the odds in Imenti Central by retaining the seat on a KANU ticket against three opposition candidates. President Moi reappointed him to the cabinet, this time in the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. He was among the most articulate ministers in Parliament, ably answering every question raised by the opposition. The minister also made bold decisions. In the early 1990s, he stripped the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry of its mandate to issue ordinary certificates of origin to local exporters. This prompted protests from several entrepreneurs. He took the decision after it was found that some foreign and local entrepreneurs were exporting non-Kenyan products to other markets using fraudulent local certificates of origin. The entrepreneurs were purporting that the products being exported were manufactured in Kenya. His strong defense of the ruling party and the government earned him criticism and attempts to oust him from the position of Meru KANU branch vice chairman. In 1997, he was transferred to the Ministry of Energy before the general election held in December. He lost the seat to Gitobu Imanyara and won it back in 2001 as a National Rainbow Coalition candidate, only to lose it to Imanyara again in 2007. He unsuccessfully contested the seat again in 2017. Jackie Wambiru, The Cabinet.
In Kawathe, Kangundo district in what is now Machakos County, in 1941, Ngutu went to the local Kawathe District Education Board School for his primary and secondary education. From an early age, Ngutu had a strong desire to serve in the disciplined and uniformed forces. He was recruited in 1966 while in his mid-20s and went to Kiganjo Police Training College in Nyeri. He worked at various stations across the country and rose through the ranks to the position of Deputy Commissioner of Police in charge of operations. Joseph Kimeu Ngutu was a police officer turned politician and had to fit in the shoes of mercurial politician and freedom fighter Paul Joseph Ngei. Ngutu was the beneficiary of Ngei's fall from power when he was finally forced to resign from his cabinet post and relinquish his Kangundo parliamentary seat in 1991 after being declared bankrupt by the High Court of Kenya. As soon as Ngei was declared bankrupt, Ngutu declared his interest in contesting the seat once it was declared vacant. He had retired as Deputy Commissioner of Police in charge of Nyeri-based Kiganja Police Training College. He contested the seat in the subsequent by-election and won, becoming the second occupant of the seat since independence. He was appointed Minister for Labour, a position he held for about a year and a half until 1992 multi-party elections, in which he lost the seat to a political greenhorn, Joseph Wambua Mulusia, who ran on a Democratic Party ticket. The party was led by Mwai Kibaki. 5 years later, Ngutu made a dramatic comeback. In the 1997 elections, he managed to win back the Kangundo seat. Ngutu once again became Minister for Labour, where he stayed for the next 5 years until the 2002 general election, in which he lost his seat. Some of the projects credited to Ngutu included the construction of health centres, Kawidhei Secondary School and coffee processing factories. He also encouraged farmers in agriculture potential areas to start coffee plantations. Ngutu worked as minister for just about a year before the 2002 general election, when he lost his seat to Moffat Maithe, who contested via the little-known Sisi Kwa Sisi party. Jackie Wimbiru, the cabinet.
Agwing Skothek was born in 1923 in Gem. Agwing Skothek studied at St. Mary's School Yala and St. Mary's College in Kisubi, Uganda, where he sat his Cambridge School certificate in 1936. In 1937, he enrolled at Makerere University College in Uganda, where he graduated with a teaching degree in 1940. He would then spend some years teaching in then Nyanza and Rift Valley provinces. In 1947, he was awarded a government scholarship to study social services at the University College of South Wales and Monmouthshire, now Cardiff University. By then, the colonial government was not allowing Africans to study law, opting to give scholarships for education degrees. Thus, when Agwing Skothek applied to the colonial government to be allowed to study law, the request was turned down. But a determined Agwing Skothek enrolled for a law degree alongside his sanctioned Bachelor's of Arts. He graduated with the law degree in 1949 and another in social sciences. In 1951, he became a member of the bar at Lincoln's Inn, London, one of the 4 prestigious professional bodies in England and Wales. He was now a barrister at law. His graduation with a law degree coincided with the time when Jomo Kenyatta had started popularizing the Kenya-African Union with demands for independence and universal suffrage within 3 years. By September 1952, the courts had jailed more than 500 Mau Mau supporters, most with no legal representation. At first, he had sought employment at the Attorney General's chamber but was given a salary which was a third of what Europeans at the same grade were getting. He protested and left to start his own law firm at Church House and was the only African in Kenya with a law firm. He earned accolades for defending Mau Mau cases, saving many. As the sole African criminal lawyer, he made it his duty to defend the Mau Mau, and he did it traversing Nairobi and central Kenya coast to the chagrin of colonial settlers and the establishment. Between 1953 and 1956, there was a ban on African political organization, but when the Littleton Constitution allowed for an increased African representation, the government allowed the formation of district-based political parties, except in the Mount Kenya region. This saw Agwing Skothek form the Kenya African National Congress, but the name would not be registered until it was changed to Nairobi District African Congress. For the Nairobi seat, Agwing Skothek had to fight it out with Mboya, who had formed People's Convention Party, PCP. He lost to Mboya. He was one of the Kano legal minds at the Lancaster Conference. In 1963, he won the election and went on to become Member of Parliament for Gem in independent Kenya. He retained the seat until his demise. In 1963, President Kenyatta appointed Agwing Skothek an Assistant Minister for Defense. In 1966, he joined the cabinet as the Minister of Natural Resources and eventually in 1967 as Minister of State for Foreign Affairs. In 1969, he died in a mysterious road accident along today's Agwings-Kothek Road in Nairobi. Jackie Wambiru, The Cabinet.
And now you're in the know. That was Jomo Kenyatta's cabinet back in the days. Now let's come back here and continue with our program. I want to take you live to a function that is currently ongoing in terms of the launch of the Autism Spectrum Disorders and Related Development Disabilities report. As you can see, we're being joined by our very own Kasichana Masha. Kasichana, good morning and good to see you. What more can you tell us about this launch?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Abdiaziz, Hashim, all the way from the broadcasting house. My name is Kasichana Masha and I'm coming live to you from KISE, which is Kenya Institute of Special Needs Education. And today here, why are we here today? We're here because the National Council for Persons with Disabilities today are launching a report on a study that they conducted on autism spectrum in the country and other development disabilities. With me here, I have the CEO of the National Council of Persons with Disability, Mr. Harun Hassan. Maybe he'll just brief us a little bit and tell us maybe what we should be expecting today. Mind you, I'll make you just update you just to remind you and the viewers that the CSF, Social Protection Florence Bora, is also expected to be here, and even the government's spokesperson Isaac Maura is also expected to be here. But first, let us talk to the CEO first, and let us maybe to just tell us what should we be expecting today in this event. Good morning, Mr. Harun.
Yeah, morning. Thank you so much. I think today we are here to officially launch a report on autism and other related developmental disorder. I think this group of disabilities have many challenges, including matters related to health, because they are constantly on therapy, on drugs, on diapers, and the challenges of the caregivers, the parents of those children particularly, are going through hard times. We never had as a government an evidence to back our policies, programs, and other interventions, to ensure that this group of persons with disabilities are included fully in all the programs of the government. So this report is more of facts, it's more of an evidence that today we are launching so that we can inform all the ongoing reforms that are ongoing in this country, especially on health, in education, in so many fronts. So I think our cabinet secretary anytime she will going to be here to release this report, and then we're going to make it very public so that all the stakeholders, whether government, whether national government, county government, NGOs, donors, faith-based institutions, they have a role to play to ensure that all persons with autism and related developmental disorders, their issues are fully addressed by all stakeholders. We have all a role, a space to play in ensuring that we build an inclusive society for all.
Maybe from the findings of the report, maybe what are some of the recommendations that you have for the government and maybe other stakeholders today?
I think one of the key things is the issue around health. You see, this form of disabilities are constantly, as I have said earlier, on health care. And, the issue of therapy, the issue of constant drugs, the issues of, physiotherapy and many other speech therapy, a lot of other things. How could this be filtered into universal health coverage for persons with disability, especially on the ongoing conversation of 100% coverage for persons with disabilities in health programs across the country? Issue of education, for example. Are we inclusive enough in terms of physical environment, in terms of trainings, in terms of curriculum, in terms of support system? What also emerged so strongly is the frustration and depressive situation of caregivers and the parents of these children. Most of these parents are from poor background in the rural counties or in the rural villages or wards in Kenya. So you can imagine to have a child with this kind of a disability, trying to ends meet for them to access facilities, health, it brings out strongly all those. And this report is quite very consultative, very broad from all institutions of persons with disabilities, especially in that particular space of autism and other related developmental disorders. So I think it's a very rich, it has quite a number of recommendations that we look up to for all our stakeholders to come on board and help in building an inclusive society.
Thank you so much, and let me release you. All right, thank you so much. So that was the CEO of the National Council of Persons with Disabilities, Mr. Harun Hassan. I have been able to release him because I'm told or informed that the CS of Social Protection, Florence Bore, is around the corner, or rather she's here already. So we're just leaving the guests to maybe relax and settle down so that the CS can come in and maybe to address the public or the people who are able to come here. Various stakeholders are already here, and we're just looking forward to get to see and get to know more about the report, maybe what are some of the findings, because from a report that was given out by WHO is that from 59 children that have given birth maybe on a daily basis, one person is or one child from that number is born with disability. And also there's another report that was shown that among 26 children that are given birth on a daily basis, one child suffers autism. So today we are going to be able to find out what are some of the findings that they have been able to come about with, or maybe they've come across with during the entire study, and maybe what are some of the recommendations that they have for the government, and what is the government going to say about all this, because you're expecting the government spokesperson to be here, Isaac Mwaura. So many details may be coming later to you, maybe at our lunchtime bulletin, Abdiaziz Hashim. So maybe let me get back to you so that we can continue with the event of today. Thank you so much, and back to you, studio Abdiaziz Hashim. My name is Kaschana Masha.
Asha, for that particular update, let me let you go so that you can cover that particular event. It is the launch of the Autism Spectrum Disorders and Related Development Disabilities report currently, and it's undergoing at KBC. And of course, I want to take you live to another function that is currently ongoing. It is the launch of the Child Safeguarding Association of Kenya. We do understand that the Nairobi County Woman Representative, that is Esther Passaris, is currently addressing the gathering. Let's listen into what the legislator is telling the flock in terms of Child Safeguarding Association.
Government, I saw that the Ministry of Health recently put out an advertisement, and they wanted some information, and they were willing to partner and give for ideas some money. So for me, I feel that we should do the same with civil society. We should bring you on board. SDG 17 is about partnership. It's about multi-sectorial approach. So it's not multi-sectorial approach only within government. It is multi-sectorial approach with government, civil society, the community. And I know that CS Aisha Juma and PSN Wangombe right now have actually been sitting down and talking to the DCI, talking to the IG, and they're going to involve CSOs, and what we're going to do, involve the community, involve the survivors, and work together to protect our children. And I think we saw that in Mombasa when we had a lot of tourists coming, pedophiles, and going out with our little girls. Movement started from the grassroots, right? People started coming forward, and hotels started getting involved. So we cannot fight any vice if we rise up against each other, if we call each other out in an unjustified manner. For me, I believe that it starts from the child. I remember, we're talking about lactating rooms. I mean, Mheshimiwa Zuleha had to actually bring her baby into the chambers, right, to show that, hey, I want to breastfeed my child. And there's nothing in Parliament. And we realized that there was a gap. So we took care of that. So for me, we are learning, we're progressing. We should celebrate every gain. Because you know what? If you tell a child from Monday to Friday, you're stupid, don't expect an A result. If you tell your child that you did very well, tomorrow, right, we will try another area and we will excel, and you encourage somebody, then the person is motivated to continue working with you. All right? So for me, civil society, I have a foundation that I formed recently, and I'm going to join CISAC as with my foundation. Why? Because I also want to do my part. But I'll tell you, the work that you do.
Ongoing at the Sarova Pan-Africa, it's about Child Safeguarding Association of Kenya. The momentous occasion, of course, represents a significant milestone in the collective efforts to protect and uphold the rights of children across the country, especially on various digital platforms. Let's come back here to the set. We're currently discussing in terms of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, its reconstitution. Is it being faced by a constitutional crisis without commissioners in place, especially following that Court of Appeal ruling that was made last week in terms of changing nominated MCAs from Uasin Gishu, 9 of them from their positions, and gazette afresh a new list of nominated MCAs of a UDA party. Does the Secretariat, which is currently led by the Chief Executive Officer, that is Hussein Marjan, have the capacity or have the mandate to carry out that particular and implement that court ruling that was made? Joining me this particular morning to make sense of this is Maliba Arnold, who is a strategic communication advisor to the UDA party. I don't want to put you on the spot, given that you're already in the UDA party. Have you been able to converse this issue of these 9 nominated MCAs? You just heard from the Court of Appeal last week. They clearly directed IBC from 9 MCAs that were listed to hold those positions be changed to 9 others.
Well, the decision of gazetting is a commission, is actually at the level of the commission. As far as I know, I do not think that the Secretariat on their own can actually carry that. You know that we actually have got pending elections. I think about 5 at the moment, and with that, that then leaves us to wait until we are done with the political processes that are ongoing, and then of course be able to constitute. You will remember that the president had put in place sometime last year a selection panel, and then at the height of the demonstrations and the complaints, he gave way, and you will realize that it's now going to a year. We have got Kenyans who are not represented. We are denying them a chance to be represented. It is their democratic chance, right? And we've done away with that because somehow, probably a section of society feels like the process of putting IBC in place should actually a little bit hold on. I think last year it was tactically to try and cause and force a constitutional crisis. But I think that in this year, it's very important that we have got IBC in place, so that then we move away from what we are now seeing. We've got not just by-elections that should be carried out. Now, simple tasks like gazetting a new list, because they already have got a list, you know, because that is an election by nomination. They already have got a list. So with that direction, then you will leave that to IBC to do that. But I do not think we've gotten to the apex of that issue. There's still possibility that the other people could actually go higher. And of course, as you're talking about, it's not just about the by-elections or gazetting this 9 MCAs list of UDA party from Uasin Gishu County. It's also about, Maliba, the boundaries delimitation. This year, March 2024, it's supposed to be the deadline for that boundaries delimitation, and we're just closer to that particular deadline, yet we don't have commissioners. The selection panel that you're just talking about appeared before the National Dialogue Committee when it was in session last year. Late last year, they said we were carrying out the process despite the political glitch that they faced between the Kenya Kwanza as well as Azimio. Why do we, like as a country, choosing commissioners a month to the date or even a year to the election? I think that is a problem that has been around for some time, politically sometimes pushed by political actors who never are confident enough in the process. And one way of stalling the electoral process is always putting a comma or a glitch within the IEBC. Somehow you will realize that IEBC gets a lot of beating, most times for nothing. If you look around, you realize that political parties in and of themselves struggle to even do their own grassroots nominations and their own elections. So just imagine the kind of massive task that IBC actually carries out. So, and you know, we need to go back to the old understanding and the truth that election is not an event. If we continue to treat election as an event, then we will continuously have the problems we have every election cycle. Election is actually a process. At the moment, we have got about 6 to 7 million people who should be registering as voters, but we've kept them out. Over a year since we were in elections, you can't change your voters card. Even if your status has changed in society, you can't even register as a voter because there is no IBC in place. So there's much more than just preparing for 2027, because 2027 started immediately after August 9th, 2022, because it's a whole cycle. The registration both of political parties, voters, then there is all those other processes, including the post-election report that came out. We've not even given it a little bit of focus. You realize that we've not discussed the report that was when I'm talking about discussing, is that having a national conversation on that. So it's neither wise, it's not safe for us to keep on doing the same things and then pushing the country, treating elections like it's some sort of an emergency, when we should actually be preparing for it several years before it gets there. Elections, like I said, is a process, it's not an event, but we've continuously treated elections as an event, and that is why a little bit of the problems we have during elections are out of this particular exercise or practice, because by now, if we had IBC in place, the commissioners in place, they would get the experience, they would get the tooling, they would put the institution into place and prime everything. We have got, you've just spoken about boundary delimitation. March is not even the deadline. We actually were supposed to do it after a cycle of every 10 years. So when last did we do boundary delimitation? 2009? 2010?
Yes.
We should have done it much earlier in 2020. We didn't do that. So we are here. We actually are about 5 years late. Yeah.
And of course, before I get to the grassroots, you just touched on something very vital in terms of the illegalities that could be in place. Like, for example, what happened in Uasin Gishu. I know you're not a lawyer, but in terms of looking into the aspect of it all, it boils down to, in terms of implementing that particular ruling and complying with it. So in the list that was rejected by the Court of Appeal, if I was the nominated MCA, given that I know there are these loopholes, legal loopholes or a lacuna in law, why should I not stay in my position until IBC is fully reconstituted?
Well, there are two ways. A court order applies to everybody.
Yes.
I know that's the Court of Appeal. If they have got any constitutional arguments, I will tell you that the affected people will actually go to the Supreme Court. And nowadays going to the Supreme Court is not as hard as it used to be. So I still think that if there is a threshold at a constitutional level, you will find them going up. That's why I'm a little bit waiting until I get to hear because I doubt they've exhausted the appeal room that actually exists. So they still have got an avenue over and above. Even IBC will have to wait until that particular room is exhausted, or those involved no longer wish to pursue it, which I doubt is the case. So even as the party, we are waiting to actually see direction from that particular end. If what has come from COA is actually the final decision, then the party already submitted lists. There's not much to do to it. There's no new name coming in. There's already a list that exists, and it's done in a way that you don't necessarily have to have another fresh process of bringing somebody on board if anything happened to those who are in, including what we now see now.
Going now to the grassroots election, not just UDA party, Azimio as well, especially for the ODM party, is currently carrying out various recruitment drives across the country, as well as the UDA party. We do expect that this year will be their grassroots election. Most of these parties have opted for the options of working with IBC to carry out these grassroots elections. Now, with no option with the IBC, if the parties at the end of the day they conduct this grassroots election, are we not going to see what recurred every year in terms of those grassroots elections of chaos and push and pull between those people seeking those positions?
Well, UDA will be doing its grassroots elections on 13th, 19th and 26th of April. Now, working with IBC, you don't have an option but to work with IBC, because in political party membership, what the Office of the Registrar of Political Party recognizes is that you are not counted as as a proper member of a political party if you're not a registered voter. So, and who registers voters? It's IBC. So at the end of the day, political parties have no option but to work with IBC, because for compliance purposes, you need at least 1,000 members in at least half the counties. That is normally 24. Those members, the 1,000 we're talking about, must not only be people with IDs, they must also be people with who also have registered as voters with IBC. So the way ORPP checks out, or rather validates party membership, is by way of whoever is in the IBC register. So you have no way other than going to IBC and asking for a redacted voter register, so that you work with it sometimes when you go out. And at the end of the day, the people who are voting are Kenyans. So whether they are voting in a political party, or whatever process, they are Kenyans. All of us are within the IBC. So there is no alternative to working with IBC, actually. Yeah.
And of course, we saw even a legislator by the name Mandera North Member of Parliament, that is retired Brigadier Bashir. He was talking about changing the IBC Acts in its entirety so that it can fit to purpose, so that if commissioners are not in place, IBC itself, when it comes to the secretariat or even leave a commissioner there, they are able to carry out by-elections. This emanated from what happened in Banisa. You do know that that particular area, 10 months from now, they have not had a legislator following his untimely demise. Should we consider changing the IBC Act in its entirety so that it gives us an option when commissioners are not there, such as now?
That then puts to question the role that the commissioners play in IBC. That literally is the engine, it's the head. The secretariat is actually just the enabler. So rethinking IBC to work that way is a good idea. But then why would we rework IBC just to fit our bad manners? What has stopped us as a nation from actually having IBC in place? There's nothing other than bad manners, political bad manners, nothing much. The president put in place a selection panel. We went out, there were demonstrations, there was destruction of property. Immediately he stopped and installed it. You can see a level of quiet, a level of calm. So it feels like there is a segment or a few individuals who want us to be in this particular situation, which is unfair, for example, to the people of Banisa. There are the 5 wards, about 4 wards also, that do not have members of parliament. So those Kenyans actually have to suffer at the behest of the whims of a few individuals, which is not very democratic in and of itself.
And of course, we're expecting answers from the National Dialogue Committee, which they submitted a report. They went further by just recommending that the selection panel be increased from 7 members all the way to 9 members. We're expecting at least they would have said the selection panel should carry on with their decision, but that has not happened. So in your view, Maliba, where you're seated, should the selection panel continue with their work?
Well, that's the decision the president will have to make, because at the moment, the person with that particular decision, coming up with the selection panel, was the president. He did that. He stopped the process to give dialogue a chance. We've had dialogue, but it's a year now. Just talk, I'd love you to actually probably engage the people of Banisa and tell them that for the last 10 months, we are still having dialogue. I don't know how, for example, those who depended on CDF are actually faring without an MP in place. So when it has to work around and there is no figurehead, there is no leadership, there is no voice in parliament, I think for us it's actually important that we move away from this. It's time we actually stopped holding hostage, democracy hostage. We do a lot of hostage holding when it comes to democracy. And how do we do that? We throw stumbling blocks into the way of doing things. Like for example, now we do not have IBC in place. But God knows if anything ever happens. We already have got the case of Banisa, and we can actually act. And 4 other areas of representation do not have their members of MCAs who died, some I think in Kakamega. Can't remember the others, but at least I can remember Banisa. There's somewhere in Kakamega, and 3 also Kisi, then some 2 other places. So all those people are waiting, no representation, nothing. But the people who've actually stole that process are okay, going on with their business. Not feeling a thing. This honestly is an assault on democracy, because democracy is not just at the bigger scale, at the national level when we're talking about the presidency. That democracy should also count even at the ward level. Yeah.
And of course, in terms of policy, this is where your expertise comes in. In terms of implementing even the Kriegler report, we had it, they made a resolution on such incidences. We have had various reports that are currently lying in Parliament buildings addressing these kinds of issues. So is it implementation, or what is the problem?
A lot of those good reports that we put in place, some of them have actually been implemented.
Yes.
Quite a number of them. There is a way those reports, the proposals therein, find their way into policy. A lot of times, of course, people expect that the way a report has been done, it can be implemented that way. These inquiry reports, these commission reports are not properly policy structured. They don't have the policy framing, thinking, and even the way of going about it. So quite a number of them end up being implemented. They might not go in the form and format that is actually in the reports.
Yes.
And sometimes people want to actually run away with the thinking that they entirely weren't implemented. Of course, there are cases, like if you were to look at the Ndungu report, so many other reports, some key issues are normally left out. But looking at the NADCO report, I am hoping that the NADCO report, as it were, it was quite a little bit unifying, not that, what do I call it? Not as divisive as BBI was. So the issue of implementation also talks about resources, availability of resources. It talks about political goodwill. There's much more to just proposals. Otherwise, there are so many proposals around, but there are other determinants to how then those particular proposals find themselves into policy and then into implementation and programs.
Yes. Yeah. And given that Parliament now resumes in a week's time, don't you think this should be given priority as opposed to these others that require constitutional changes?
It's true. I think IBC, for example, should be given priority. Those 5 areas of representation have been denied representation, and it will be unfair for us as a nation to move on as if they don't exist. If democracy is denied anywhere within the country, it means that it can also be done elsewhere. So I think as a matter of priority, Parliament should run, first of all, with, or rather, not just Parliament alone, but all the key actors, including political actors outside of that framework, should actually work out to ensure that the IBC issue, the IBC selection, is actually prioritized. I think on the other side, for us, for UDA, we are good. We were good with what the president did. We'd love to see these actually worked on very fast, because we've been raving, because we wanted to go to the by-elections, compete in them, and also prepare for our grassroots elections, not just to comply with the ORPP, but to also popularize the party, anchor it, and have it working without a proper IBC in place. We have got about like I said, about 7 million people who would actually come into our fold if properly now as members, if they register with the IBC, as if they were to register as voters. But as it is, it's stalled. Yeah.
And of course, we have seen this not just this year alone, in the past as well. So one wonders, have we learnt our mistakes? Because this is what propagates what we witness after every electioneering period.
That's why I think as a nation generally, I said this is the bad manners of a few people in the political class. But we as Kenyans really want things done. Every Kenyan is busy. They're trying to actually get on with their life. They hope, like for example, if I'm in Banisa and I have got a child who needs a CDF bursary, for example, in the presence, or rather if the MP was around, you know that the way CDF is actually administered is not the same way it would be if in the absence of an MP. So, of course, we would love to say that it's okay. NGCDF has got an office, it has got a manager and everybody else. But the political leadership, the kind of ownership that comes with the presence of the patron who is a member of parliament, is missing now. But somehow you realize that is not big news just because it's somewhere down there. And that's why the question about electoral malpractices is one of that question that we really need to start treating with the contempt it deserves. Because somehow MCAs are elected easy, clear, no problem. MPs are elected fine. Governors, everybody else who has got a problem down there goes to court, has that sorted. But then at national level, even where courts intervene, you realize that we still want to have extra constitutional, extrajudicial ways of doing things. And this, like I've actually said, we are in this situation extrajudicially. The president's hand was forced. Demonstrations, destruction of property, assailing the economy, to the point where the president said, okay, listen to the members of the church and said, okay, if this is the price we pay, then I'll put a post to it. But do you think we are being fair to the people who are not represented? We are not being fair. Yeah.
And of course, indeed, if you're just joining us, we are talking about the reconstitution of the IEBC. As we speak, anniversary towers do not have commissioners in place. And of course, there are various court orders they need to implement, as well as by-elections, and finally the boundaries delimitation that is just a month away. Those are the issues that IEBC needs to handle. And if you're just joining us, the conversation went even further to look if the secretariat, which is currently led by the Chief Executive Officer Hussein Marjan, if they're able to carry out these particular initiatives. And that is not the case, because the Chief Executive Officer and the commissioners have various mandates from the IEBC Act. And of course, Maliba, in terms of even allowing what the Member of Parliament is proposing, if we see a scenario in the likelihood where, and this is just hypothetical, where the Chief Executive Officer can be able to act as a chair of IEBC, are we also going to witness what we witnessed back in the day between Chebukati and Chiloba?
The way we've structured our quote-unquote parastatals is that there is no executive board. Bar for IEBC, where the chair has got executive powers.
Yes.
Having the chair as the CEO is a little bit of a problem, because the CEO implements what the board does. So if he sits in, normally there is that a conflict of interest. You are at policy level, on your decision making, and you also at implementation. So a little bit of it grays the area. That is why, of course, other companies do that. But IEBC is an electoral, an EMB, and being an EMB, it's susceptible to political winds and problems. That is not a problem we really want to get into. We'd rather have a place where the chairman has got his complete powers and everything else. The CEO is here, and the push and pull is administrative and nothing constitutional. It can always be remedied within that framework that is that delimits the powers between the two levels. But having the two work together, in my opinion, I think that is not a very clever thinking, because we will fly right into a trap we don't want to get. Yeah,
like what we witnessed back in 2017.
What we've seen in the past, that is, no, there should be a clear delimitation between the Secretariat and the Commission.
And of course, as we are coming to the close of this particular conversation, in terms of the boundaries delimitation, we do expect it to happen on March 2024. And of course, the parliamentarians are coming back in a week's time. The National Dialogue Committee report, which is currently before them, the committee recommended for the expansion of the selection panel. But as we speak, the selection panel has not even addressed members of the fourth estate. We are not even aware of the process. Where have they reached? Have they identified those commissioners? Because as we speak right now, there is a Herculean task before the commission itself. And of course, in terms of the by-elections, we've just heard from Maliba, there are Banisa, there is Kisia East, that is Awadi in Kakamega, and various other places. In terms of even as well as court decisions that are coming out from the corridors of justice, people who petitioned the elections in various constituencies, wards, even counties, are being fronted before the courts. And of course, once those courts makes those decisions, it will be upon the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, to consider those particular matters. Now, Maliba, as we're coming close to this particular conversation, the parliamentarians are coming back. The president, once he comes back from Italy, should this be the first topic on the table, as well as from where you sit, is there good political will to ensure that these commissioners are put in place? From where you sit?
From where I sit, I think politically we've got a level of consensus. The president demonstrated sufficient goodwill to allow for dialogue. We've had NADCO run its course. It even went and came back at some point to take care of a few issues that hadn't been factored in. So I think the room for dialogue has actually sufficiently, in my opinion, been put to use. And when Parliament comes, I think it's time for us to kickstart this particular process. Of course, there are other issues around, there are bigger issues we are running with. We've got an economy to actually work on and stabilize. We've got other issues like the social health fund that we are working with. We've got issues in the judiciary that also needs to be worked around. By and large, there are quite a number of things that should actually be prioritized. But I think for this, there's not so much work around it. There's not so much. If it's increasing the membership, easy, we drop them in and get to move. So that way, I think it's one of those things that if I were to have a take of 5 that Parliament should actually run with, this should go top. A little bit of the issues that pertain to the budget, the Finance Act 2023, those for me should be the things that actually get to be prioritized. The projects that are currently being stalled because of court action and they need parliamentary intervention to remedy, we need to get on, because we need to get to a place where we stop talking. At this particular point, we are moving into the second year. This should be the end of talking and now actually just sit down and do work.
And now, given that we're talking about that NADCO report itself as we wind up, in terms of these other issues that require constitutional reforms, we have heard from the Azimio Brigade clearly stating that if it is the creation of the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary as well as the office of the opposition leader, it should go to the people. It should not be a preserve of the parliamentarians to decide if these particular issues will be included in our constitution. It should go for a referendum. What is your point of view on that?
I do not think that at the moment we as a country are ready for a referendum. We are not ready for any general election type of engagement as a country. The economy is just starting to crawl. We really need to put in a lot of work to strengthen and stabilize the economy. It will be tiring, it's fatiguing to take people back to elections, even before they see fruits of what they queued for in 2022. So it's neither wise, it's not safe. I do not think that the government is keen on actually having a referendum or even having a general election type of engagement going forward. If there are issues that need constitutional reform, I think largely the government will be more willing and leaning towards having those that can actually go the parliamentary way, especially if we have got a consensus. The others that will need anything other than a parliamentary process, that can wait, and probably until the next general election, we can have it as a question in the general election in 2027.
Thank you so much. That is Maliba Arnold, the Strategic Communication Advisor of the UDA party. Thank you for making time for us this morning. We have conversed what should happen in terms of the reconstitution of the IEBC, as well as the NADCO report that is currently before the National Assembly, and they're set to resume in a week's time. And of course, we're expecting to see if those matters will be conversed on the floor of the House. That puts a cap to our first conversation here on a news check on this, the last day of the month of January 2024. On the other side, after this short commercial break, will be in terms of the changing face of the land justice system. And in studio, we'll be having Honorable Justice David Mwangi, a judge from the Environment and Lands Court. We do have Edward Kimani, a bishop, and finally Elizabeth Ndugu, a vice chair of the Nairobi Law Society of Kenya. We do have those guests with us this particular morning, and we'll be conversing matters that are near and dear to your hearts when it comes to land issues. But first things first, let's take this short commercial break, and we'll see you on the other side of the break.
East African community is one of the most integrated regional blocs in the world. But internal dispute is threatening the good old EAC.
If we can grow by 2 countries every year. So I'm looking next year for countries like Ethiopia to join, countries like Sudan to join, countries like Eritrea to join, Djibouti to join. All these countries in the Horn of Africa, I want to believe that they can join.
This week on Inside Government, we are talking to the Cabinet Secretary, East African Community, Penina Malonza. She'll be explaining to us what is the future of East African community and what Kenya is doing to deepen intra-regional trade. Watch the conversation right here on KBC Channel 1 with me, O'Brien Kimani.
Welcome back and thank you for joining us on this second hour. My name is Abdiaziz Hashim. My co-anchor this morning is Lucy Mwaura. We are talking about the changing face of the land justice system. We do have a great panel from the corridors of justice as well as lawyers. And finally, we do have a bishop with us in this particular session. They are none other than, let me start on my immediate left here. It is Elizabeth Ndugu, the Vice Chair of the Nairobi Law Society. Elizabeth, good morning and welcome.
Good morning to you.
And the gentleman in the middle, that is a Honorable Justice David Mwangi, a judge of the Environment and Lands Court.
Good morning.
And thank you for coming.
Yes.
And then finally on the farthest end is none other than Edward Kimani, a bishop.
Edward Kimani.
Yes.
Yeah,
thank you so much for making time for us. And before we start off our conversation, we'll be looking at some of the multi-sectoral approach to land justice to improve it and ensure that it is accessible to this particular justice when it comes to land matters. It is a matter that is near and dear to many Kenyans. And now a little bit of graphics that we're playing for you on our screen is that the Environment and Lands Court case backlog reduced by 44% from 20,867 cases in 2017 to 2018 in the financial year. We do have also to 11,665 cases that were reduced from a period of 2021 to 2022 financial year. Now the performance, what it means is that over 100% case clearance were conducted rate annually. That is the first bit. On the second bit about what the court has been able to achieve is in terms of that despite these achievements, there are outstanding challenges at the corridors of justice. The court has a significant number of cases older than 10 years. The Environment and Land Court has over 800 cases with estimated value exceeding to 800 billion. A number of the cases concluded by the court have progressed to the Court of Appeal, meaning that they are still stuck in the justice system. Another unique dynamic in Nairobi is that there is a metamorphosis of the case. Even the judge here will be telling us, because those cases, as much as they have completed it, another party will come to the corridors of justice with a similar matter that they have to listen. And of course, that is the changing face of what the land justice system means. Those are the outstanding challenges before the corridors of justice. This will be our conversation for the next 1 hour or so. Let me start with a judge. Judge, thank you once more for making time for us. So far, we have seen cases that are before your court, which is the Environment and Lands Court. In a year, just put it in perspective for our dear viewers, how many cases do you receive, if you're aware?
In 1 year, we receive over 1,000 cases. Yes, on average.
On average.
And kindly allow me to clarify a point. The 800 cases over 10 years.
Yes.
are not in the land court in Kenya.
Yes.
They are in the land court in Nairobi only.
Only. Okay.
Nairobi only.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's so many even for Nairobi. So in terms of receiving cases, so you receive more in Nairobi compared to other counties. Is that what
Definitely. Nairobi is the epicenter of litigation, as my learned friend here will confirm.
Yes,
I do confirm.
Yes. We've just even heard the terms "my learned friend" here, senior counsel. Let me go to this to Wakili here. Wakili, in terms of those cases you've seen, the judge has just expounded on it. Those many cases, especially from the capital itself, going to the corridors of justice, you're a litigant. When you go to these court cases, or if some of your colleagues go to the court cases, is it accessible and is it easier for you litigants as well as your clients to get justice from the corridors?
In some cases, it all depends with what easier is. It's easy to actually access the court in itself, but in terms of the duration it takes to have your matter resolved, that's an issue we have really had as, of course, the advocates in this country and even the citizens of this nation. Yes. So in terms of duration, not so easy. But accessibility, yes, it is very accessible.
Before I head over to Bishop, let me head over to the judge. We're talking about some of the significant achievements that the courts have been made. Initially, we didn't know that the Environment and Lands Court division was there. Before, they used to go to a division in the High Court. So with the introduction of the Environment and Lands Court, has it even reduced the case backlog in terms of cases that comes in terms of land?
All right, thank you very much. Now, I wish to tell the people of Kenya that the Environment and Land Court is no longer a division of the High Court. It is an independent court on its own, created under the constitution that the people of Kenya gave unto themselves in the year 2010. So when we talk of the superior courts of Kenya, we now talk of the High Court, Environment and Land Court. We also have the Employment and Labor Relation Court. The three are courts of equal status. Above them, we have the Court of Appeal. Then after that, we have the Supreme Court. The Environment and Land Court came into existence in the year 2012. And the statistics that you have just displayed demonstrate what the court has been able to do. As I have said, the 800 cases that are on the screen that are over 10 years are in Nairobi. In the year 2012, when the court was being formed, the matters that were over 10 years were over 6,000. So in that period of 10 years, the court has been able to reduce the backlog from 6,000 to 800 as at that date of that report. I can tell you, from our last meeting in January, the 800 cases have now reduced to about 550 cases. And one of the reasons we are here is to tell the people of Nairobi that from Monday, the 5th day of February 2024, we are launching what we are calling Expedited Land Justice Working Group. And one of our intentions is to clear this backlog entirely. We are changing our approach. We are involving all the stakeholders. I am happy Bishop is here, representing the religious institutions, the law society, our key stakeholders in justice delivery, is one of the members of the working group that will be launched. We have every other representation from all the sectors, from all the people involved in land matters, because we want to change the paradigm shift. We want this backlog of matters over 10 years to be a matter of the past. Our promise to Kenya, and especially to Nairobi, because I am here to speak on behalf of the Environment and Land Court in Nairobi. Our promise is that in the next 2 years, the oldest case in Nairobi will not be more than 3 years.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you so much for that clarification.
Yes.
And we just heard there will be an expedited land justice group that will be launched on Monday 5th,
yes,
which is on 2024, which will be on Monday. Now, a consumer here, given that we do have a we have a lawyer, and finally we do have a judge, but a consumer here. Bishop, you have a flock. These are some of the issues that come before you. As a bishop, do you think a multi-sectoral approach from what the judge is talking about will solve some of these issues that are dogging the land sector?
Yes, true. In fact, even the church, as we speak today, one of the areas that we discuss, especially in the flock, is how to invest in land. And the challenges that most of the members that we serve, they have experienced is the court cases that have delayed for many years. Also the church itself, don't forget the church also, we look for public land to develop. And what has happened is most of the properties, especially which had been allocated for churches like in Nairobi, most of them were taken over and sold by the councillors. So we have a challenge in terms of also expanding into development. And another thing that we have found also with especially with our flock is that value that has been held in investment in the land, and especially for the cases that has been there for 10, 20 years, that is denying that owner of that land to develop or even an inheritance, because we look at land as a parcel and part of the inheritance that is given by God. So the minute you deny them by delaying the cases in the courts, that means the next generation will not be able to inherit. And that is a value that is being lost by many people in the church today, by also people in the marketplace. They cannot even go to the banks and borrow. And we've been talking and saying within the church fraternity, can we bring in an investment plan? But most of those properties, especially for the poor people and the people who are in church, they own properties, they cannot develop. So we have a situation whereby the holding back of giving justice to these land cases has actually affected the flock in so many ways in terms of depression. Most of them are coming to churches looking even for the high cost of putting up those cases in the church. And what the judge has just said, a multi-sectoral approach involving the church, because we are the ones who nurture that soul when it is punctured, when it is hurt, when it is in pain, because the lawyers are too expensive. So most of them are looking for an avenue to deal with the church. So the key issue here is, and I would request the judge, if you can actually put in the church is also part of the pillar of that, that would be good, because we have issues that will need to drive that not only from the perspective of the soul, but also an investment.
In fact, kindly allow me just to show you and demonstrate how central religious organizations are in what we are going to do. And by religious organization, I mean all of them. We want them to be mediators. We want to involve them as mediators. So one of the things we are going to do, and that we undertake to do in the working group, is to have the church identify for us people from amongst themselves who will be trained as mediators to help us in solving some of the matters. Because it becomes very embarrassing. Some of the matters before us are between siblings, brothers, sisters, even mothers and their sons. I believe, I honestly believe the church can help us. And the church, the other religious groups, Muslims, Hindus, they can help us in resolving this. Yes.
As an alternative justice avenue.
In fact, we do not want to call it alternative. We want to call it appropriate.
Yes, appropriate.
Because it is the appropriate way of sorting out that kind of dispute.
Okay, Elizabeth, you can respond to what the bishop is saying. You're too expensive, especially in this current time. But the other issue is that you have seen among the challenges that are before you, especially the court that our dear friend here heads, in terms of the issues that come before the courts, they might take time, but some residents even opt to resubmit that particular case in a different form. Even if the courts rule on that particular matter, they will come back in another form. So you as litigants, what are you trying to help those clients of yours so that if Judge David today sees a case that he saw 10 years ago coming up again, how do you expect him to handle that?
Okay. I will start by, of course, responding to Bishop. Well, we're not too expensive. Actually, most of the people who say we are too expensive are people who've not come to visit a lawyer. Yeah, but we're not expensive. That's just a myth that is out there. Then the other thing that we face from the Kenyan citizens is that when they're getting into land transactions, they choose to do it themselves. Now, the moment that, for lack of a better word, there's a dispute, that's when they run to the lawyer.
Yes.
That's when they run to the lawyer. And actually, most of these disputes can be avoided by, at the first instance, just before you get into a transaction, visiting and involving the services of a lawyer. We are actually very affordable, Bishop. Then, secondly, in terms of people bringing the same matter back to court, it's a problem we're having. It's a problem we have discussed both at the Court Users Committee and even at the bar bench committees. It's a problem that cuts across the board. As lawyers, the best thing that we can do is bring it to the attention of the court that indeed this matter was before either the brother or the sister, a different judge, and the issues that are in this case, the subject matter is the same. And therefore, it ought to be struck out or dismissed. That is what we do. But now the process of, bringing that application, it's just a case of indiscipline. I will call it a case of indiscipline. And for people not feeling satisfied, if it's on appeal, it's okay. But just starting a fresh case over the same facts, over the same subject matter, it is just wrong. But the law provides for a solution whereby you can say that this matter is actually either sub judice, meaning that it's in another court, or it's res judicata, meaning it has been heard and previously determined. Then in that case, the judge will confirm that the court actually rules that then it can't continue, it's actually dismissed.
Let's put a cap to that conversation because I need to take you somewhere live and then we'll be coming back with this conversation, this interesting conversation that we're having here in the studios. If you have to talk to us, reach out to us on our social media platforms at KBC Channel 1, at Abdiaziz Hashim 1. We'll be sampling some of your views as well as questions and be posing to our dear guest this morning and this afternoon. This morning still, it's 11:18. But I want to take you live to the Treasury buildings. I do understand that the Principal Secretary, who is Dr. Chris Kipto, is currently addressing members of the Fourth Estate. Let's get to hear the status of our economy.
And I will give the chairman the opportunity. It has prepared and adopted a work plan and strategies with clear timelines on how to deal with pending bills. This has been discussed with our Cabinet Secretary, who is the appointing authority, and granted his approval for the committee to execute the work plans and strategies. They have also gone ahead to prepare the strategies and instruments which have been approved for purpose of scrutiny, analysis and pending bills. And this, what they have done is, first, there is public notice to all accounting officers, principal secretaries, with at least 21 notice given to them to submit pending bills. So that lapsed yesterday. And they have finalized the various formats for the submission of pending bills by the accounting officers and principal secretaries, and that was communicated to them. They have also prepared instruments for use during the scrutiny, analysis, and verification of the pending bills to fast-track the process. They have requested for submission of pending bills in writing from accounting officers, giving them specific days when each one of them will appear before them. And quite a number of things that the chairman will brief us. On my part, I just want to say that when we started, the pending bills were 640 billion in our estimate. In the budget policy statement, you have seen a figure of 567. And you recall that in the time of Kibaki, when such a committee was established, pending bills were 380 billion. But what was actually paid after verification was 10% of that. So we are hoping that this exercise will be completed within the time set, which is 1 year, but we have given 3 months for them to give us the first report to submit to the principal secretary. And so that 3 months ends in mid-March. And we expect them to have finalized, and part of what is verified, we will use that in the supplementary budget, which we hope to prepare around the same time, and early April, and therefore be able to settle what is determined to be payable within the supplementary budget that's coming up. The rest will be settled within the fiscal framework that we have, and depending on the fiscal space that's available, given that we have a program that we are pursuing, which is very clear on the targets that we want to achieve when it comes to fiscal consolidation plan. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have said that going forward, we shall not tolerate accumulation of pending bills by accounting officers. So, beginning June last year, we said any bills accumulated in the financial year that ended becomes the first charge of this financial year. So we expect that to be sorted by every accounting entity. Then, going forward, we hope to accumulate, but we have a major reform.
Well, currently speaking at Treasury Buildings, that is Principal Secretary Dr. Chris Kipto talking about the pending bills that are before the government. They've just clearly stated a roadmap for what they will do to handle those pending bills. And of course, he clearly stated that all the ministries were expected to submit a report before the Treasury, and that particular date lapsed yesterday in accumulation of 640 billion in 3 months' time, which is mid-March. He clearly stated that all the ministries, accounting officers in various ministries, should submit their report in terms of the pending bills so that it can be included or infused in the supplementary budget that will be presented once more before the House. In terms of the accumulation of pending bills, he clearly stated they will not be tolerated by the accounting officers in various ministries in a bid to handle these pending bills that are before the government. And of course, we'll be showing you more of these events that are currently ongoing in various parts of our country. But right now, we are talking about the changing face of the land justice system here in our studios, and with us is Elizabeth Ndugu, the Vice Chair, Nairobi Law Society. We do have Honorable Justice David Mwangi, Judge in the Environment and Lands Court, and finally we do have Edward Kimani, a Bishop. And of course, I was about to go to the Bishop before I go to the Judge. Bishop, we were talking about, we've just heard from the elaborations that were made by Elizabeth and the Judge in terms of making these systems easier. So as a church, how are you going to help? Because we've just heard from Judge David is talking about these disputes being between relatives, family members. We've even seen some people even going to the extent of killing their neighbors or their loved ones for a piece of land. So what has the church done to address these issues? Because they are societal issues at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you. I think the first thing is answer the lady lawyer that what I meant by being expensive is relative to the incomes that people are generating, especially in the rural areas.
Yes.
Because if you look at the per capita income in the rural areas and the kind of fees that have already been set under the Law Societies Acts, it is very expensive for them. And I repeat, it's very expensive because we look at how much those households earn. So we would look at maybe when they are launching the working group to look at that situation of fees so that we can accommodate especially the very poor people who have been unable even to go to courts because of the expense, even filing documents. It is now the digital platform has come. But before they had to go through long distances to come in and file documents. So if there is a way that we can create a fee structure that fits even the lower group, that would be very good. Now, in terms of the interventions that the church is making today, is to cancel. We are counseling the people who are in crises, the families that are fighting. We are talking to them in terms of to understand that inheritance, how that inheritance can be monetized, how it can work for all of them, how we can unlock that value which is in the courts and help them even to develop, to borrow, and also to share that inheritance among the families. Yes, it's a challenge, but at times you find what I keep on saying is like a demon in issues of land. But we know we have handled quite a number of cases, and they're understanding the value of that land and how it can help the families going forward and their children's children. So the interventions are there. We're speaking to them. We handle small seminars, small conferences. We call lawyers. We call people, let's say, from the KRA to discuss with them and to show them how do we monetize that value, yeah, and how do we exit from those problems of disagreements on division, on who is who, on matters of the will, because we also have challenges are basically on the will itself. The way the wills are structured, the way the wills again are contested by the members of the family, the way even the legal fraternity also, joins and works and in the changes that certain families want the legal documents, the wills to be changed. So we're also talking to them about how do they legalize the document called a will and what is the effect of a will. So we have those interventions. We are talking to them. We are pulling them. We are putting them and saying, look here, this is an investment opportunity you're missing in this season that you can pull even within a family, build and still share the revenues, the profits. So instead of taking a third or 50% of 100, you can build that and have an elephant and still share and be able to recover, even increase the value that you recover from an investment. So that's a new paradigm shift that we are talking to them. That why sell, why divide a quarter of an acre, let's go to a bank, let's release this asset, let's build, let's generate, build 10 apartments. You take an apartment which is the value of that, of maybe small pieces of land that you can have. So we are discussing with that with the members. We're looking also at the church, also building up those investment structures that will be, we're looking at the legal interpretation. Yes. That they are not just a chama, it's a legal vehicle that will pack that asset so that the members that are fighting can see value and we are able to unlock that value for them to benefit. Yeah.
And of course, Honorable Judge, as you respond, even the judiciary itself, it's an independent arm of the government. At the end of the day, you do have the responsibility of ensuring even our societies that you serve at the end of the day are in order. Recently, the Honorable Chief Justice Martha Koome last year launched a social transformation through access to justice, which is STAJ, which was, of course, entitled to the Milimani Environment and Lands Court. Let's say, for example, how has it worked for your courts as well? And as you respond to those issues, these emotions even ran high to the extent, even if you give an order, people do not comply with it. So how has the court also addressed those issues in terms of the enforcements of the court orders themselves?
Okay, now, I first want to appreciate the bishop. I wish all religious leaders were as enlightened as he is.
Thank you.
And we would not have as many disputes coming to court if the church, if religious organizations took the approach that the bishop here is taking. In terms of educating the people, in terms of informing the people, I want to tell the bishop that the kind of judiciary we have today is not the old kind of judiciary. Feel free to even invite judges to churches, to mosques, to speak about these issues and tell the people where the issues, where the challenges are. That way, we shall be helping our society, we shall be helping our people to benefit from this resource called land, because as it is, I do not think we are benefiting from this resource owing to the huge number of cases that are pending and disputes that are not even in court. By the way, some of the land disputes manifest themselves not as land disputes. As you had pointed out, some even come as criminal cases. But if you look at it, if you scratch the surface, you get that it was only a land matter. The dispute, the quarrel, was about the sharing of land or boundary disputes. So, if we are able to address this issue, we shall be addressing very many social challenges, and we shall be helping our society to live in peace. In terms of legal representation, I want to say that the Law Society of Kenya has a pro bono scheme. Pro bono means they are able to offer free services, all subsidized legal service to those who cannot afford. The government also has a pro bono legal scheme, which is not well developed. I think it is still developing. It is not a very old scheme, but we hope by and by we shall get there. But it is important to note that anyone who is not able to afford a lawyer can approach the Law Society, who will refer them to a panel of pro bono lawyers. There are also a number of non-governmental organizations, like, an example is Kituo cha Sheria, offer this kind of legal service to people who cannot afford. Yes. Legal fees has been, it is an issue. And one of our recommendations when by the way, the Environment and Land Court now has two divisions. We have the Land Division, and we have the Environment and Planning Division. When we were launching the two divisions, the Chief Justice promised to look into issue of legal fees to ensure that they are affordable. She cannot do that alone. She needs to consult a lot with other stakeholders in the justice sector through what is called the National Council for Administration of Justice. So we hope and pray that that is an issue that will be addressed. In the law also, we have what is called, if a person really came to me and said, I'm not able to pay legal fees, as a judge, I'm authorized, having access to say, yes, I excuse you from paying legal fees. But that is a very rare situation.
Have you ever done it in your practice?
I don't remember doing it, but it is in the law books. Yes, it is in the law books. Yes.
And of course, given that, Elizabeth, you're on the ground, before it goes to Honorable Justice David, before it reaches his table, this is the issue. Do you advise those clients properly, or what are those root causes you have witnessed as a lawyer before it heads over to the court that is fueling land disputes in the country?
Okay. First and foremost, thank you, Bishop, for the role that the church is playing, especially even in educating the citizens out there. I can attest to that, because even in my church, I have been able to teach people on succession and matters to do with land. And also the other day, I had a bishop give me a call, a bishop from Mombasa, and he told me, I have one of my congregants who called me and they have this issue, but and they asked me to pray for them. However, I feel they need a lawyer more than they need.
More than prayers.
But anyway, back to the question. From my experience in the past, say 2-3 years, most of the land disputes are on boundaries, as the good judge has said. We have issues to deal with tenancy. That is a hot dispute in Nairobi. It is actually one of the biggest chunk of disputes in the, I want to believe, in the land court. Tenancy. We have matters to do with, of course, trespass into people's lands. So those are the ones that are forming the bulk of issues. And of course now the disputes from succession, but now those do not, they go mostly to the family court, ideally. But under the Environment and Land Court, the disputes, the tenancy, land grabbing is there, fraud is also one of the big ones. Fraud has been big, and of course we have issues of titling, because you find someone got a lease from the city county several years ago. There's also double allocation. So those are some of the disputes that have actually come to our offices. Yes.
In fact, she has said it very, very well. One of the, we had promised, or had been promised, that one of the panelists here would be from the National Land Commission. Because, and probably from the Ministry of Lands. Because, can you imagine, only 23% of Nairobi has titles. Only 23% of Nairobi has titles. Yes.
Has titles, yes.
That is a key source of disputes. Yes. The process of titling brings closure to disputes.
Yes.
And in identifying the stakeholders we want to work with, we have identified the National Land Commission.
Yes.
We have identified the Office of the Chief Land Registrar, who are supposed to be issuing titles and registering. In any event, you can only confirm that a land is yours when you have a legal document
to show that.
You can only benefit fully when you have a document which you can take to a bank and use as a security, which you can take you to your circle and use as a security. This is one of the key areas that we have to look at. Elizabeth has also identified a number of issues. In our concept, we have divided Nairobi into 5 areas.
Yes.
We have the Eastlands, Embakasi, Jiro. We have this other side of Kibera, Karen. Then we have the other side of Babadogo, Kasarani, Mweki. Then we have Westlands, Runda areas. Because of the nature of disputes, they bear the same characteristics. We are surprised that we have adverse possession in Karen. But just as I said, scratching the surface a bit deeper, you realize the reason is because the leases in Karen are expiring. Yes. We have a lot of dispute in town center, the center of Nairobi.
Yes, CBD.
CBD.
Yes.
The kind of dispute we have here now are, my lease of 99 years has expired. By the way, many of us keep our titles in our under the mattresses. We hide them. We forget to read that it was a lease, and a lease has a limited time.
Yes.
It will expire one day.
True.
So you need to be conscious. The law provides that 2 years before it expires, the ministry should write to you. The Ministry and National Land Commission should write to you to remind you. I am not sure that happens. But even if it does not happen, as the leaseholder, you also have an obligation to tell them, I will be applying for a renewal. So when it happens that the lease has expired and you have gone quiet for 2-3 years, there are some other intelligent people who specialize in this. Those are some of the issues.
I was even getting to that point, Honorable Justice. We're talking about the sanctity of even the title deed itself. These days it has been lowered to the extent anybody can manufacture. You just go here to town, a section part of the town, I don't want to mention it. You just manufacture those title deeds. And then they end up in courts. You give it to lawyers at the end of the day, trying to defend a case that is no longer there to begin with, because even the nature of that particular document to start with has been manufactured in a way that is not legal. Let me use that word. So, Bishop, have you had these experiences, especially when it comes to land grabbing issues, especially in the capital? We have witnessed a number of issues. We've seen people picketing, we've seen people going to the courts. From the divisions that the judge is talking about, even dividing the sub-counties within Nairobi itself, have you had these issues?
In fact, even they do it in certificates. I mean, you've seen politicians also with fake certificates. So the issue is how can we develop that security system, especially within our title documents? And one of the proposals that we had is to create a land bank. And that land bank also has a digitization title, so that even if the original title gets lost, then the digital title that is kept within a land bank is held in custody in that land bank in trust for the owners. So changing it, and we have the blockchain technology, is like a smart contract. So that smart contract, you cannot change it. So if we can bring in within this working group that kind of a solution, because we are now in a digital age.
Yes.
And what we can do with that kind of a fintech solution within the land bank is the digital title itself can stay for years and years because it is a smart contract between the government and the owner. So if we can implement that, it is easy to capture and also to completely eliminate the issue of fake titles. But you see, even if we put in the security things, we talk in currency, in passports, in certificates, they are still ahead of us. So, but a smart contract, cannot be broken. You cannot enter. Is through the blockchain technology. And what you are doing with that blockchain technology, it's easy to use that digital title, to mirror it. Even for purposes of investment, you can create a bond using that smart contract, and that is the direction we need to move. It's not just okay. We'll do the survey. We'll do, bring in the issues of the cases out of the courts, but then we'll still have the problem of fake certificates and fake title deeds. The smart contract, fintech technology. We have a digital solution. And a land bank.
Because the first person it gets to, it's Elizabeth before it even heads over to the court. So do you have systems in place to ensure that these particular documents that I'm taking to the judge here are legitimate documents at the end of the day to prove that this person is the owner? Do you verify before? Because I'm sure there are legal repercussions even if you're a lawyer and you're protected by the Constitution. If you produce a fake document, you're liable to that situation as well.
Yes. When Bishop here comes to my office for a land transaction, the first thing that we do is a search and due diligence generally.
Yes.
We have to ascertain that the title is actually indeed in the lands registry. We'll get an official search from the lands registry that confirms the ownership. It also confirms whether the property has any encumbrance to it. Because if you miss this particular step, you may actually buy a property and find that the moment that it comes to you, you find that you sent a demand letter for land rates of around $1 million because you did not do due diligence even at the county to just find out whether there are any debts owing to it, to find out whether the owner is indeed the owner. We can even go to an extent of finding out whether this ID is actually original, to find out if, because we've had a case where the person came with an ID, etc., but we find they were two different people sharing a name. So we have had such cases. So we do something called due diligence. And to talk about something that Bishop raised on going digital, at the lands office now we have Atisasa. It has actually gone digital. In Nairobi, most transactions, if not all, are being done through Atisasa. All landowners were required to do something we call conversion and to actually do some bit of georeferencing for the apartments, etc. And actually now the titling is through the Atisasa. It did cause us trouble for some time. It's still a bit slow. It has caused a lot of delays in transactions, but we believe we are getting to the final steps of it and streamlining the process. Yes.
And of course, in terms of digitization, thank God we have the judge here. We have heard even the Chief Justice talking about digitizing services. You can be able to go to the judiciary portal, file your case at the end of the day and get your results or get the judgment or even how the case is progressing. You can see through the digital platforms. But as you launch this particular group, are you going to address these issues in the rural areas? You do know not so many people do have access to these digital platforms at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you. As I said, for now, this is a program for Nairobi.
Yes.
The epicenter
will be Nairobi
of land disputes. But we hope to spread it out. First and foremost, to counties with urban areas. Because some of the challenges we have identified that have led us to think of changing approach are prevalent in urban areas. I am sure what I'm dealing with here in Nairobi, it's also being experienced in Mombasa. It's also being experienced in Nakuru, Kisumu, the town areas.
Yes.
It is very interesting. And Bishop, we say God works in miraculous ways. We are happy that you came today. He is talking of solutions. Now, Remember, we have said only 23% of Nairobi is titled.
Yes.
So even if we were to digitize and digitalize, for now we can only do for 23% of Nairobi. If Addis Sasa is going to work, it will only work for 23% of Nairobi.
Yes.
So we still have the other over 70% of Nairobi to deal with. And we hope the stakeholders we have put in place will come up with ways. We shall be able to come up with ways of expediting that. Nairobi has a very interesting history. In Nairobi, we have people who hold titles under various legal regimes, under various laws.
Yes.
There are people who hold titles that are called freehold. There are people in Nairobi who hold titles that are called leaseholds. There are people within Nairobi who hold titles that are called absolute proprietors. In other words, some were registered under the previous Government Lands Act.
Yes.
Others were registered under the RTA, Registration of Titles Act.
Yes.
Reconciling that, harmonizing that, is now the transition that is preventing us from going digital. That is preventing us from going into the promised land. Again, our other key stakeholder is the Nairobi City County Government, who took over from the former City Council. I was listening to Elizabeth when she was explaining due diligence.
Yes.
In some matters, it is not possible to do due diligence because of this. There were double, triple, 4 times, 6 times allocations. I have seen people, 7 people, claiming one title. It reminded me of a verse in the Bible where it is said that 7 women will be fighting for one man, saying, can we be identified with you? 7 claiming out of. So some of these problems are endemic. And it is only the stakeholders, like the issuance of the allocation was the City Council. We need all the records, all the original records, so that we can verify, yes, this is a true owner. Yes, I know it will not be easy, but with our stakeholders here, we shall do whatever it will take to ensure that we bring sanity in Nairobi, that we bring security of title. We want every property owner in Nairobi who has a title can walk and say and sleep soundly knowing my title is secure and nothing can happen to it. So that you can even use it to borrow.
Yes.
We want the Nairobi is the capital city of the country. 28% of the GDP of Kenya is generated here.
Yes.
We want investors to come. When they buy land, when they lease land, they should have that piece, that the title, the contract is secure.
Bishop, as you respond to what the judge is saying, and Elizabeth as well, does it speak to our morals itself as a country and as a people? If we are going to that extent of even killing our loved ones, displacing our relatives and neighbors, does it speak to our morals itself? What does it say about our morals?
That should not happen, because I think the issue here is understanding what is land, what is the gift of land, and how do I move ahead with the gift of land? Because if you look at biblically, land is a gift of God. Yeah. So if we look at land as a gift of land or a gift of God, then our morals will be the standards of God. That is something for inheritance. Yeah. But God has given us the right, to increase, to multiply, and to grow that piece of land. So if our mindset changes, in terms of approach to pieces of land within families and within members of a family, that whatever piece you have, however small it is, you can increase that value. Then because the issue is ownership and value, don't forget ownership and value. When you own, then you have value that you can monetize, that you can pass on to the next generation. But if we look at that from an investment point of view again, is how do you utilize that piece of land to build value, and that value will be adequate for you and for generations. I think then the issue of small, families killing each other, fighting for small pieces of land, that they'll never even be able to use. Yeah, and we also bring in, especially if we develop, how do we create that fractional titling from the master title? And I think the lawyers and the judges here, because that is key, so that even if you are on top of a building on the 10th floor, you still have value, you still have a title, because it's a fractional title of the master title, and you are able still to do create value out of it as a family member. You can pass it on to the next generation. So we can demystify that by understanding how we monetize land, how we build on it, and how that gift can create wealth.
Given that now we're entering the final leg, let me give you at least a minute each so that you can give your final remarks. Let me start with Elizabeth here. Elizabeth, as much as you have dealt with these cases for a number of years, what are some of the solutions, even the judges here and the judicial system itself is currently listening to you, what are some of the solutions that could be put in place to ensure these cases are reduced?
Okay. In the Land Justice Working Group, which is what we are here to talk about, and actually, we are trying to find solutions by involving different stakeholders. Number one, at the Lands Office, that is the Ministry of Lands and the National Land Commission, all loopholes need to be sealed. All loopholes need to be sealed, and also at the City County, all loopholes need to be sealed in terms of the system of titling and actually verification of title, etc. Number two, these over 70% of lands that do not have titles in Nairobi. Actually, the government should actually consider working on this as a matter of urgency. So that we at least know that we're not dealing with the issue of, the basic thing, which is having a title, because without a title, we can't even verify who is the owner. So at least that should actually be resolved. Then morality, Kenyans, I am urging you, most of us have become very greedy. Most of us want to be unjustly enriched, and it's what is causing the rot. That's where the fraud is coming in from. That is where the issues of families killing each other over land is coming from. So we need to change our ways as Kenyans as well. We need to go back to the basics, because if we are all moral, then we wouldn't have issues of corruption, issues of land grabbing, and such.
Thank you so much. Judge, kindly, we're out of time.
Thank you very much. Number one, I'm happy to be here, KBC. Yes.
Welcome.
Yes.
And this is the first time I'm hosting a judge, because the demeanor that you have in the courts and currently here are totally different.
As I said, this is a new judiciary. And the Chief Justice blueprint talks about social transformation through access to justice, meaning even the judges are accessible. One of the things we hope for as a working group, as we conclude our assignment in the next 2 years, is to come up with a checklist that will even help the common man. When you're buying land, what do you look for? When you have a dispute involving land, what is it that you should do? What is it that you must have or that you must file in court? Then I want to say that prevention is better than cure. The church, the religious organizations, our stakeholders, including KBC. And we thank you for even this opportunity to speak to the people of Kenya. This is one way of preventing disputes before they arise, because it is within our powers. And when a dispute arises, it is good that we embrace alternative justice system. And as I said, it is not necessarily alternative, it is appropriate. It may be the appropriate way of sorting out dispute. Finally, there is a crisis of climate change. We all have a responsibility to respond, to mitigate. By doing land justice, we shall also be doing climate justice. Because one of the things we hope to do is also to conserve and protect ecologically sensitive areas, which are everywhere, including Nairobi. We need to protect them as a way of mitigating climate change.
We're literally being kicked out of the studio.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation today. And three things we should look at, especially with this working group, is harmonizing the rates and rents, especially the practice of assessment and evaluation, and also the unpaid bills, especially within the Nairobi County government. Number two is also to look at the banking system, because most of those properties, as you talk, the 23%, maybe 50% of them are held by the banks. And that is also causing huge problems, especially within the families. The third thing and the final one is let's create a portal, you know, where people can come in. People can see what is happening. People can also bring in their contributions to this working group. So if we create that working group, it's a launching pad also for investments in this nation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That is Edward Kimani, a bishop, and next to him is Honorable Justice David Mwangi, Judge of the Environment and Lands Court. Thank you for making time for us. And then finally, we do have Elizabeth Ndugu, the Vice Chair of the Nairobi Law Society. Thank you for making this conversation enriched, and hope our dear viewers who are watching us right now, you have gotten something about the changing face of the land justice system. And you've just heard from the judge. There will be an expedited land justice working group that will be launched on Monday the 5th, and of course to improve some of these teething problems that are within the judicial system, so that they can be faster and accessible to you, dear viewers, and affordable as well. That marks the end of our conversation this morning on News Check on this, the last day of the month of January 2024. My name is Abdiaziz Hashim. My co-anchor has been Lucy Maura, but it seems they have changed. But at the end of the day, don't go too far. Lensa Odingo, do you understand? It is Lensa Odingo. And then finally, my colleague Gladys Mungai is up next with Kurunzi Mashinani. Don't go too far. The conversation continues, and do remember that AFCON Iko KBC.